And I got more handouts here that I'm going to try to pass out to people. Have to wait a minute. How are we doing online there with Zoom? Hi, folks. How are we on Zoom today? Monica, we good? All right. People on Zoom can hear me, I hope. Others coming in. I have handouts here. Let me put them back out there. And we have a little video we're going to show in just a second. Yes. Is it working? This is a non-critical to the program video. So if we can make it work, great. If we can't, it's all right too. Oh, it has to load. What was that those who were here this morning for the service, remember the story for all ages, right? Tools. Okay. Well, while that's loading, I'll just introduce myself. I'm Joetta Prost. I serve as the denominational affairs leader for St. John's. So I like to call it the wider UU world team. And I'm glad to be here with you today to talk about the Unitarian Universalist Association, General Assembly, and Article 2. And we are also Zooming. I don't know how many people are online, Monica. 9. All right, great. And we have some folks here in the room.
We are Unitarian Universalists. We are people of many paths who are brave, curious, and compassionate thinkers and doers. Every day, people are inundated with information, overwhelmed by demands, and pulled by a culture that seeks to divide us from the web of life. Unitarian Universalism reconnects, bringing people together with meaning and inspiration. We are a house without walls, a congregation without spiritual limits, and a movement that calls you to put more faith in yourself, your community, and your beliefs. We are a faith that honors your mind, your heart, your journey. Simply put, we are a guided path towards a better you and a better world. Grounded in hundreds of years of thoughtful religious communities, we are people of many generations, ethnicities, genders and sexualities, and spiritual backgrounds. People engaged in making the world a better place. People focusing on what really matters: love, justice, integrity, and hope. Unitarian Universalists have different beliefs, but shared values. We are Unitarian Universalists, and at the same time, we may also be agnostic, Buddhist, Christian, Hindu, humanist, Jewish, Muslim, pagan, atheist, believers in God, and those who let the great mystery be. The diversity of beliefs you'll find in a Unitarian Universalist community is one of our strengths. We are always learning how to see the world from a different perspective. What unites us are our core principles that uphold 7 real-world values: believing in the worthiness of every person, showing compassion and fairness, accepting others for who they are, growing through a personal search for truth, leading with democratic spirit, working for justice, and understanding that everything is interconnected. 7 days a week, Unitarian Universalists live these principles by doing. When we gather, we worship, reflect, and remind ourselves what matters most in life. Whatever our age, we learn to live with more wisdom, more awareness, more gratitude, and more soul. We show our values by showing up to answer the call for social justice. We have a track record of siding with love for civil rights, LGBTQ equality, immigration reform, environmental sustainability, reproductive justice, racial justice, and more. Find what it means to live your deepest values out loud. Join us on this extraordinary adventure of faith.
Isn't that a lovely way to get started today? A video from the UUA. Well, folks, I'm really happy to be here with you, and I'm ready to get started with my slides, which I have in front of me. I'm going to try to not crane my neck and look behind me, but I know I will sometimes, and begin a conversation about the UUA, General Assembly, and Article 2. Those who were present, which is most folks here for Reverend Alice's sermon this morning, got a great setup. I told her that she did exactly the setup that we need for this afternoon, because this part is going to be more sort of the dry part, a little bit dry, but also filling in the blanks, filling in the parts that she referenced, but that weren't made specific. So I think we're recording in the back, and so others will be able to watch this later, and I'm grateful for that. So let's go to the next slide there, Roberto. So most of the people in the room, although I don't know who's on Zoom, so I'll speak inclusively of all, know that the Unitarian Universalist Association is really, I like to say, the Association of Congregations. That's not typically how we don't call it the UUAC, but it is the Association of Congregations. And we grew out of the 2 original faiths of Universalists and Unitarians, which joined together in 1961. And of course, we have deep connections going back to England, Poland, and as we know well, Transylvania. So let's talk a little bit now about UUA and congregational polity. So that word, when I first became active in a congregation a long time ago, and somebody talked about polity, I wasn't even sure what that meant. So it's basically governance, all right, in a simple way of thinking about it. The UUA is an association of UU congregations. Each congregation is independent and sets its own mission, decides its own priorities for action, chooses and calls or hires ministers and staff, and we're responsible for our own money. We don't have a funding source like denominations that give money to their local churches. So we are independent. All that is in good, and also all that is in sometimes challenges. But I like this language. I think we're on the right. We're not. Yeah. Okay. Go back to. I don't know how to tag you, Roberto. I guess I'll just say next slide. Will that work? So we're still on the one that says the UUA Association of Congregations. As free congregations, we enter into this covenant, promising to one another our mutual trust and support. So we are a covenanted group of congregations under the umbrella of the UUA. Okay, next slide. As part of our governance, our congregational polity, congregations choose delegates, and those delegates choose the leaders of the UUA. And those leaders, the staff of the UUA, take care of overseeing the resources of the association. And then in return, the UUA supports congregations. They have staff in Boston, some in Boston, but also literally all over the country. I work in some volunteer work I do with staff who live in many states around the country. And we know that there are regional teams as well that work together. And then to support that, we congregations contribute to what's known as the UUA Annual Program Fund, or APF. And the APF sometimes gets called our UUA dues, but I like to use make sure everybody knows the official name, the UUA Annual Program Fund. And that's how we support the work of the UUA. Next slide. So this is an old photo. It's from pre-COVID. It's all those who've been to GA know we voted with paper ballots, and you raised your ballot to vote. Now all voting is done electronically because we are in person and online for General Assembly. So, but either way we vote, the UUA leaders are elected by delegates at General Assembly, and those leaders are the president, co-moderators, and the board of trustees. Next slide, we'll see the UUA co-moderators here. Reverend Meg Riley and Charles Dumond are the current co-moderators, and their responsibility is to chair and run the board meetings each month or however often they meet, and also to run the business meetings of General Assembly. And then the UUA has various specialized boards, committees, and advisors that also help. For example, they have a financial advisor who gives guidance about the financial management of the association's assets. Okay, next slide shows a photo, and this is, I guess we got some playing going on there in the chapel. Thanks. It shows our UUA president, the Reverend Susan Frederick Gray. She's, I don't know how well you'll be able to see it here, like directly above me here in the purple and yellow, in her Side with Love stole. This picture was taken in Charlottesville at the in the minister's response to the hate rally that happened in Charlottesville that resulted in a death. And she was there among the ministerial leaders, faith leaders in the front row, helping to lead that. And if you've ever heard her speak about that experience, it's really quite powerful. She has been our president for almost the full term. Her term ends in June. And next slide, we will be electing the Reverend Dr. Sophia Betancourt to be the next president of the UUA. She was nominated by the nominating committee. You may remember her name back from 2017-18 when there was an interim time when 3 co-presidents shared that responsibility temporarily, and she was one of those people. She's a theologian, a minister, and someone that I don't know personally, but I know of her work. Okay, next slide. Let's talk about what the UUA does for congregations, for St. John's, for First Church, for any UU congregation. So this is my laundry list that I've built up over the years from talking about the UUA and how important it is to congregational health. First of all, the UUA is our voice representing us in the public arena. And whether that's in Charlottesville or whether that's speaking about abortion rights or whether that's speaking about LGBTQ rights, a number of other issues, and then helping us as UUs to organize for social justice with Side with Love and with UU the Vote. Many people were involved with that during this last election. So those are important ways that they help us to mobilize. The UUA has developed curriculum for all ages. You may know of Our Whole Lives. That's the comprehensive sexuality education program that the UUA developed some years ago and updates periodically, but we're using one of the UUA curriculum in the anti-racism training that the council is sponsored and that I'm co-facilitating with Linnea Lose. And that curriculum development work is ongoing and it's all very accessible on the website. Beacon Press, this hymnal and lots of other books are printed by Beacon Press, our own press. And then the next one, spiritual resources. If you're ever looking for a chalice lighting or a reading because you're performing a lay-led service or you want some inspiration for a meeting you're leading, go to the UUA website and you will find all kinds of spiritual resources there. Last on this page is credentialing of candidates for UU ministry. So people who have completed the required education and skill development and experience to become a UU minister are credentialed by a committee of the UUA. Next page, we got more ways that the UUA helps us. Multicultural growth and LGBTQ resources. The websites, it's like a deep dive into a ton of resources. You can get lost on the UUA.org website, okay? The UUA provides retirement and health insurance programs for church staffs all over the country. And we at St. John's, and I suspect at First Church, utilize those insurance programs. Our endowment funds here are invested in the UUA Common Endowment Fund, where they are professionally managed on our behalf. And they provide lots of stewardship resources, governance and church management information, ability to connect with lots of other UUs. There's UU leaders listservs, and Chris Wagner is a member of a UU finance directors listserv, those kind of things where you can connect with others around the country. And finally, they were a big resource for us during the pandemic, helping in a lot of ways, giving us guidance, helping provide mutual support to congregations. So the last page of what the UU does for us has some especially important things, I think. One is the first one for us at St. John's, and I suspect also at First Church, professional guidance and support from UUA regional staff during times of transition and congregational stress. For us, that's the Reverend Sharon Dittmar. I know at First Church, it's a different member of the regional staff. That is invaluable and so important. And then a coordinated ministerial search system that we as congregations can use to connect with potential interim ministers and future called ministers, settled ministers. The last thing that is on the list is General Assembly. So go ahead to the next slide, Roberto, please. So what is General Assembly? A lot of you, some of you have been to General Assembly. How many here have ever been to General Assembly? All right, excellent. So General Assembly is the annual meeting of our UUA. Participants spend time in worship services, workshops, hearing speakers, interacting with others in interest groups and identity groups. And it's also where we make policy decisions for the association. Anyone may attend. You don't even have to be a member of a UU congregation. You can be a friend of a congregation, a member. You could be a leader in a congregation. You can be a delegate, any of that. Member congregations have voting delegates, and we'll go to the next slide. St. John's is allocated 5 delegates. I don't know if that's what the folks at First Church have. You're about our size, a little bit bigger. You might have 5 or else 6. I'm not sure. And in our case, the board appoints those delegates. And you can participate as a delegate either in person or online. And I will tell you, having been through the COVID online only option, and then last year when it was live and online, I was still online. It's a very good online system. It's not like, you do feel like you really are a part of things, is how I would frame it. Delegates are expected to attend the business meetings, and we offer some stipends. And put in a plug, there's a link to apply to be a delegate in our weekly e-news. The deadline's about a month from now. Okay, next slide. So those who've been to GA know about the WARE lecture. This is a big event every year at General Assembly. It's on Saturday evening, and it is a featured speaker of some power and importance in various ways. Sometimes that is someone with a formal leadership role, and other times it's a cultural or arts leader. We've had past lectures from Linus Pauling, Malvina Reynolds, Vernon Jordan, Holly Neer, Kurt Vonnegut, and Martin Luther King, and poet Mary Oliver. That's just a few. This tradition of a lecture to the UU General Assembly goes back to 1922. And on the website, you can see the list of all the people who have been the featured speakers. So, all right, let's go to Pittsburgh. Remember, anybody can attend. It's only 5 hours away, even closer if you want to participate online. Registration fees go up March 1st. Hotel reservation system is now open. And if you want to talk with some of us who've gone to GA and learn more about it, please do. You saw the hands there. Let's show those hands again. Who's been to GA? All right. So check it out. It's a great opportunity to go. Probably won't be this close again for a while. So it's a wonderful opportunity, a wonderful time to go. And there's really important stuff to talk about at GA this year. So let's go to the next slide. Oh, I didn't say this, but it is very cool to sing our hymns with a couple thousand UUs. I want to tell you, Debbie's back there going like this. That is one of the highlights. And also the GA choir is really always amazing. Okay, so now we're going to move into talking about what is Article 2. So at this year's General Assembly, delegates will be voting on proposed revisions to the UUA bylaws, Article 2. Oh, what's that about? All right, and show the next slide there. Great. Okay, you're right with me, Roberto. Thank you. This is my screenshot of when I opened the bylaws and turned to the table of contents. Okay, it's just the top part of it. It's several pages of sections of the articles and sections of the bylaws. Well, why is that? The UUA is a 501c3 nonprofit religious organization. And as such, we have a constitution and bylaws, as Reverend Alice mentioned this morning, that guide how we as an association function. And it's everything from how the Board of Trustees works, how some of those specialized committees work under the guidance of the Board of Trustees, and many other, how General Assembly operates. And if you look at Article 2, the first article, Article 1 says name. It's like, okay, a legal document. What is the name of your corporation, your organization? The Unitarian Universalist Association. Okay. Then we'll go to the Article 2, and let's go to the next slide now, Roberto. So this slide hopefully is clear. What we have on the left side is what the current component parts of Article 2 are, okay? So Article 2 is the big section, and then we have these sections titled Principles, Sources, Purposes, Inclusion, and Freedom of Belief. All right. So I'm going to touch on each of those in a minute. And then on the right side are the proposed bylaws articles. So just like here at St. John's, when we revise a bylaw, sometimes things get put in different order, or something is removed and something else is put there, or the numbers change. So there's a lot of tediousness about bylaw management. And also some fluidity and options. So you see that the names have changed a little bit. Some names have changed, some haven't, in the sections of Article 2. All right. Principles, we know what that, looking at the current principles, we know what that is. What's the sources? Okay, this is why you have your hymnal here. Turn to hymn number 1, and then turn back one page where it says, we, the member congregations of the Unitarian Universalist Association, covenant to affirm and promote. And then it lists our 7 principles, which everyone in the room knows. And then the living tradition we share draws from many sources. Okay, that's our laundry list, if you will, of everything from humanist teachings to earth-centered to Jewish and Christian teachings, all the sources that give us wisdom in our faith. All right, that's what sources is. So the sources in the new Article 2 are instead framed as inspirations. Isn't that nicer? Like that, inspirations. Because we don't count any one of those sources as I'll use the small b Bible to tell us what's the truth, but they all inspire us, don't they? Okay, purposes, that's purpose of the association. Inclusion and freedom of belief remain in the new article, and we'll talk about those in a little bit. Okay, next slide. So Reverend Alice has shown this I call it the flower here, the love flower on the left. And that's the logo that's been sort of put forth in support of the Article 2 new language for our values. And we're going to delve into that in just a little bit. On the right-hand side, someone took our teal hymnal and put it into one of these software programs. Every word in the teal hymnal, and it shows the big words are the words that are most prominent, okay? So the biggest word in our teal hymnal is, guess what? Love. How about that? Right? And you may have seen on the St. John's Facebook page, a similar one that is on a couple slides back. That's from the gray hymnal. So I find that to just be really a fascinating way of saying, where are we? Where are we grounded, right? All right, next slide. Why is Article 2 being revised? Carrie McDonald is the UUA's executive vice president. Okay, so we elect the president. The executive vice president is a staff member of the UUA. He's kind of like the COO of a corporation, if that makes sense. And he has a great quote here. I'm going to just read it because I couldn't say it better. The UUA bylaws mandate a regular revision process of Article 2 every 15 years. Article 2 has the language that is at the heart of our faith for many of us as UUs. It has the principles and the sources and our purpose as an organization. The language in Article 2 lives in the UUA bylaws and has been revised a number of times over the course of the UUA's history. We are a living tradition, which means regularly reviewing and asking ourselves, does the Article 2 core language reflect who we are now and who we want to be? Okay. Next slide. Here's all the words in the gray hymnal, and there it is again. The love is at the center. This is so how this happens is the board says it's time to revise Article 2, and there are a number of reasons why. I'm not going to like focus on all the things that led to that, but part of it was it's just time, right? It's been more than 15 years since we have and made any substantial change to the bylaws for Article 2. So they constituted a commission, the Article 2 Study Commission, and they gave them a charge, all right, instructions of what they are to do. And that happened in June of 2020. And included in that charge was this statement: our commitment to personal, institutional, and cultural change rooted in anti-oppression, anti-racism, and multiculturalism values and practices is love in action and should be centered in any revision of Article 2. I don't think they'd done this hymnal thing whenever they wrote that, but yeah, matches up, doesn't it? What we sing, what we say, what we think. Okay, so next slide. So the commission in their report, and you have in your hands some of the pages from the commission. I was a little stingy because it's so much printing. I didn't include all the details about who was on the commission, and I didn't include the current language. I you know, save paper. But you have in their report that we're going to go through in a minute. And in that report, they say, we are continuing in the line of proposing changes that fit the times in which we live. We fully expect that one day another commission will review our work and significantly change it. We are writing this in pencil, not etching it in stone. Okay, so let's go ahead and go to the PowerPoint now, the PDF, please, Roberto. And I did not print all of this, so I am going to have to use that hand mic that you so thoughtfully made available for me here. So. Good. Yeah. Do I have to do anything since work? Yay. All right. I'll just stand over here for this part. So this is a PowerPoint created by the commission when they gave their report to the UUA board in January. All right. We're going to use it to guide us through part of the content. All right. We want to scroll on ahead here. I guess it's roll or scroll. I don't know which. This is the names of commissioners. Several ministers, several younger UUs, a religious educator with board liaisons and staff support. Next page. This was the charge from the UUA, part of the charge. And again, it was kind of a formal process constituting the commission and giving them their directions of what they were to work on in June 2020. All right. And telling them to bring their report. That's fine. They say we encourage creativity. There is nothing sacred about the number of principles and sources, nor their specific wording, nor in any way that Article 2 is laid out. We encourage you to give it a fresh look. That's what they said to the commission. Thank you. All right. So then what did the commission do? Well, they did a number of activities, some of which you may have been aware of. You've seen it in the e-news maybe, or you participated. They created materials online, some of which I have used. They engaged with all the what they call affiliate organizations. That's groups like Black Lives of Unitarian Universalism and the Liberal Religious Educators or the RE Directors Association, that kind of thing. They had sessions at the last two General Assemblies where they spoke about the work and engaged participants in discussion. Lots of videos periodically, and then surveys where we could give our feedback to what they were kind of mushing around on at an early stage, okay? And then they had 45 feedback sessions over the course of the time, which is an amazing. Can you imagine how many comments and how much feedback they got during all of those opportunities for discussion? Okay. The report then was given to the board in January. And what will happen next is that there will be opportunities for delegates to recommend amendments to the proposal. So this is where our democratic process comes in. Those with the authority of a delegate from congregations will be able to recommend amendments. And what they plan to do is to facilitate that conversation, not in a, like, I bring my amendment, but rather in a, all the people who sort of think this, get over there and talk virtually, but get over there and talk about how you might make it, what it is that you think needs to be made better. And then together bring an amendment if you feel one is needed. So it's meant to be a collaborative process. At General Assembly in June, there will be a simple majority vote required in order for the Article 2 to move forward to a final vote in June of 2024. So the bylaws require that any change like this be approved 2 years, and in 2024 it would require a 2/3 majority vote. So they tried to look at mission, values, covenant, and inspirations. That's just, I'm sure when they gave this presentation they probably talked there, but we'll just skip on to the next slide. And the function of the current principles, they express a shared ethic and imply a certain theology, one that values the individual growth and natural world and diversity, but it does not name these values explicitly, nor does it name many other values important to us collectively. So with that in mind, they began looking at the concept of what are those values? What are the single words that articulate the values we share that can be touchstones for our faith? So Article 2 is an agreement between congregations. Remember, that's what the association is. It's all congregation members saying we covenant to do this. So it's an agreement between congregations, and the commission wanted a covenant based on values that framed why we pledged to do this work together. When they looked at the inspirations or sources in our current language, remember, they said, well, that list of kind of a list, it'll never really be complete. And maybe instead we need to create something that's more broad than that. All right. And then inclusion, that language was seen as pretty current. It had been updated more recently. And freedom of belief, the language that says you use do not have a creed, and no one can be required to believe in a certain creed or a certain belief system in order to be a UU. They maintain that in very clear language, I think. So next. Okay, so here's where I want to go, Roberto, if we can, to the video. I guess let's set this down. One microphone is enough. I don't need 2 microphones, do I? So what we're going to do now is listen to the members of the commission reading what they have proposed. Part of what they have said to us is we have to read it visually, but we also have to hear it in order to understand it. And I think it's good to do both. You have it in your little packet. And it starts on, oh, did I keep a copy here? Yeah, it starts on page, I think it's 20. The pages are numbered. 19, thank you. It starts on 19. So you can visually read along as we listen to it. And let's go ahead and open that video whenever you can, Roberto, and start it at about 22 minutes into the video. So this will be the members of the commission reading it to us. And it's about, I think it's about 10-15 minutes. And then after that, we will have small group discussions. So.
Right, sessions where we would present, sections of draft language, but also in our work, right, when we were working on it and revising it and changing sections, is to read it and read it again and read it again, right, to really sit with this, and to read it out loud. When I teach writing, I often encourage my students to read their writing out loud. You will hear things you don't see on the page, you inhabit a different space, and some people just process better hearing it rather than seeing it. And so we thought, just to make sure everybody has kind of heard it, really kind of thought through it, and I know the board's going to have some time to ask us some questions afterwards. So we wanted to center down in this for a moment and just talk about, just have you all listen to it. I'm not sure, I'll be completely honest, that we sort of ascended to the heights of poetry, which was part of our charge, but it's definitely a little more poetic. It does, I remember looking back at some notes from an earlier session as I was prepping for this, and I had to think about how some wording didn't sing and some wording sang to me, right? And so your mileage will vary, but let's start with the purposes. The Unitarian Universalist Association will devote its resources to and use its organizational powers for religious, educational, and humanitarian purposes. Its primary purposes are to assist congregations in their vital ministries, support and train leaders, both lay and professional, to foster lifelong faith formation, to heal historic injustices, and to advance our Unitarian Universalist values in the world. The purpose of the Unitarian Universalist Association is to actively engage its members in the transformation of the world through liberating love.
Section C 2.2. As Unitarian Universalists, we covenant congregation to congregation and through our association to support and assist one another in our ministries. We draw from our heritages of freedom, reason, hope, and courage, building on the foundation of love. Love is the power that holds us together and is at the center of our shared value. We are accountable to one another for doing the work of living our shared values through the spiritual discipline of love. Inseparable from one another, these shared values are justice, pluralism, interdependence, transformation, generosity, equity. On the screen now, you see a diagram, and it is an image of a chalice with an overlay of the word love over the flame, with 6 outstretched arms that create a circle around each of the core values and form a 6-petal flower shape. Each arm is a different color, and they are interdependence, orange, equity, red, transformation, purple, pluralism, dark blue, generosity, teal, and justice, yellow.
Interdependence. We honor the interdependent web of all existence. We covenant to cherish Earth and all beings by creating and nurturing relationships of care and respect. With humility and reverence, we acknowledge our place in the great web of life, and we work to repair harm and damaged relationships. Pluralism. We celebrate that we are all sacred beings, diverse in culture, experience, and theology. We covenant to learn from one another in our free and responsible search for truth and meaning. We embrace our differences and commonalities with love, curiosity, and respect.
Justice. We work to be diverse, multicultural, beloved communities where all thrive. We covenant to dismantle racism and all forms of systemic oppression. We support the use of inclusive democratic processes to make decisions. Transformation. We adapt to the changing world. We covenant to collectively transform and grow spiritually and ethically. Openness to change is fundamental to our Unitarian Universalist heritages, never complete and never perfect.
Generosity. We cultivate a spirit of gratitude and hope. We covenant to freely and compassionately share our faith, presence, and resources. Our generosity connects us to one another in relationships of interdependence and mutuality. Equity. We declare that every person has the right to flourish with inherent dignity and worthiness. We covenant to use our time, wisdom, attention, and money to build and sustain fully accessible and inclusive communities.
Section C23, Inspirations. As Unitarian Universalists, we use and are inspired by sacred and secular understandings that help us live into our values. We respect the histories, contexts, and cultures in which they were created and are currently practiced. These sources ground us and sustain us in ordinary, difficult, and joyous times. Grateful for the religious ancestries we inherit and the diversity which enriches our faith, we are called to ever deepen and expand our wisdom.
Section C24, Inclusion. Systems of power, privilege, and oppression have traditionally created barriers for persons and groups with particular identities, ages, abilities, and histories. We pledge to replace such barriers with ever-widening circles of solidarity and mutual respect. We strive to be an association of congregations that truly welcome all persons who share our values. We commit to being an association of congregations that empowers and enhances everyone's participation, especially those with historically marginalized identities.
Section C2.5, Freedom of Belief. Congregational freedom and the individual's right to conscience are central to our Unitarian Universalist heritage. Congregations may establish statements of purpose, covenants, and bonds of union, so long as they do not require that members adhere to a particular creed.
That's it. That is the revised Article 2. If you read our first draft, you may notice some very big revisions and some small ones. We had a lot of feedback and we listened to that feedback. And we incorporated a lot of the changes. Evolution became transformation. This is one example. We think this work, as great a departure from the current Article 2, is also a departure that signifies that we are going in a different, we are building upon what, it's not a different direction. We are building upon what we have done. And we are preparing ourselves for the future. Is everyone happy with everything we wrote? No, we're not. None of us are, even on the commission. You really, you should have been in the room where it happened. But we were not, we knew we could never be perfect. We could never have the language that absolutely everybody everywhere agreed with unless we ultimately said nothing. Because we have people who do not agree with our 7 principles as they are written too. So we have never had this full agreement, nor do we want to. And we recognize the fact that this is a change. This is not a small change. We have now gone from 1961's purpose and objectives to the 80s purposes and principles to purpose, values, and covenant. It is part of that transformation of our living tradition. We are not etching this in stone. We are writing it in pencil. And 20 years from now, there will be another group that will look at these and come up with yet a new way of thinking. If I'm alive, inshallah, I will be so thrilled to see that happen, because it means that we are embracing the future and not tied to the lifeless creeds.
And Walker, who is one of the co-chairs of the commission. And I thought it was really good to hear what she said, huh? So we have done a good job here. It's 1:45. What I had in mind now, if you're willing, both online and here, is to have just some little discussion groups. Now, let me set some parameters here. I'm going to give you a couple questions. Roberto's got them up there for me. And I'm going to invite you to talk. All right. But I'm not going to do a report out. We're not doing that today. We're just thinking, we're experiencing, we're sharing our thoughts and feelings about this. We're taking it in, if you will. All right. That's what I invite you to do. And then come back on the 12th of March when we'll have another gathering and we'll have a guest speaker and we will take questions or have conversation. But today, let's just absorb it. Okay. So your questions first is, how does it feel to center love? All right. And then the second one is that I suggest you choose one of these. Okay. And read in here. When you read that one, I'll just pick one here. Justice. We work to be diverse, multicultural, beloved communities where all thrive. Okay. Then there's a covenant statement. So then I say, how would I have St. John's on here, but how would St. John's or First Church, how do you use act upon the covenant language for that value? Okay. So your little groups can pick whichever one of the flower you want and talk about it. Just to marinate. Make sense? And online, we're going to put you in groups of about 4 or 5, depending on, and hopefully enough people online have accessed the online link to the report, to the commission's report where the language is located, and you all can have a little discussions there. Now, I don't know how long you're going to want to talk, and I'm not regulating that or controlling that. You're going to talk in your group. When your group is done, have a good rest of your afternoon. Okay? So let's just cluster. You don't have to count off. You don't have to, just gather with the folks around you, move a few chairs. We'll set up the breakout rooms and just visit about how does it feel to center love as our core value, and choose one of those values. And then what does it feel like to covenant about that? All right. So, and however long you talk is however long you wanted and needed to talk today. All right. Thank you, my friends, and come back on the 12th. Yeah. And great.
Hi, friends.
Just move your chairs around.
I'm going to add you to a,
Sorry, Meg, you kind of have to relocate, don't you?
try not to interfere with Joetta. I'm going to add you to a breakout room now. And like she said, you can stay and chat as long as you like. And then please plan to come back next March 12th for the next session. Okay, thank you.